Hello everyone, my name is Ty Wilson. I am a Georgia workers' compensation attorney practicing law in the state of Georgia. And our video topic for today, what are the 10 most common mistakes that can ruin your Georgia workers' compensation claim? All right, so the purpose of this is to put you on notice and let you know what are the things that can have a horrible effect, can ruin or destroy your Georgia workers' compensation claim in hopes that you will avoid them, and in hopes that in some cases you will do what you need to do to avoid getting into any bad situations with your Georgia workers' compensation claim. So without further ado, let's start. Mistake number one, failing to report your injury. Once you get hurt on the job, you feel a pop and pain, you feel something that you know is an injury. Typically, most people's responses are, I'm going to just ride out the rest of the day, see how I feel tomorrow, maybe soak in a hot tub, that kind of thing. The reality is that's fine on the first day, but if you know you're hurting that next day, you've got to report that injury to your supervisor, your boss, or the person above you and let them know, one, you're injured, and two, that you need medical care for your injuries. They should have something called a posted panel of physicians. If you want more information on that, check out our other videos. But if they do, then the question is, who can you see on that posted panel of physicians to get looked at and make sure that this isn't something that's more serious? A lot of times we get calls from people who did not report the accident. It's now been a while and the employers fired them because they can't work because they're hurt. And they said, well, I just didn't want to tell them. I didn't want to get fired. Now I can't do the job. Now they're firing me. So now I want to punitively file the claim. Well, that's not the right answer. So you want to report it immediately. If they're going to terminate you, they may terminate you. That is their right. Under Georgia law, they can terminate you for any reason for cause or for no cause at all. The reality is that Georgia is an at-will state, so they can fire you for cause or for no cause at all. So the important thing that you have to look for is, what is the extent of your injuries? Is it a serious injury? Is this something that may require surgery? Is this something that may require procedures? That kind of thing, because if it does, that's going to be very expensive. If this employer terminates you, they may also terminate your access to health insurance if you have health insurance through them. So you need to keep these things in mind. That being said, if it is something that's serious, you want to get it covered under workers' compensation and not pay for it through health insurance, where you will have to pay a large portion of it if it falls under Georgia workers' compensation. If you have a question, always recommended that you reach out to a Georgia workers' compensation attorney and see what your options are. All right, mistake number two, not seeking medical treatment. So this kind of goes hand in hand with not reporting the injury right away. If you don't seek medical care and later on you get to the point where you can't work because you're in so much pain that you can't do the job you were supposed to be doing, well, at that point, it is a strong likelihood that the employer will deny the claim because they'll say, well, no one told us about it. And that could have a detrimental effect on you. You could end up responsible for a work injury. Now you can't work. You may lose your health insurance if it's connected to that job. And now you're setting yourself up to pay for expensive medical care, which may or may not have been the responsibility of the workers' compensation insurance carrier. That could put you in a world of financial hurt. One of the number one reasons for bankruptcies in the United States is high medical bills. So keep that in mind. If you're injured on the job, you want to report it immediately, you want to seek medical care immediately, and you want to try to get back to work as quickly as possible, but treating the injuries so that you can physically work. All right, let's move on to mistake number three, ignoring the doctor's advice. So let's say you get hurt, the employer does the right thing. They say, hey, we're going to run you to the hospital, we're going to run you to the clinic, let's get you checked out, let's just make sure everything's okay. You go there, the doctor says, hey, I don't want you lifting anything over 20 pounds, or I don't want you bending, I don't want you stooping. And you know that in your job, that's all you do. And you go back to work and you're like, and then you hurt yourself. You could be pushing yourself into a mandatory surgery or something, or some sort of painful procedure you may have been able to avoid if you would have followed the doctor's restrictions. So it's important that you listen to the doctors. It's important that if the doctor does give you restrictions, that you keep a copy of it with you. You want to give a copy to the employer and say, here are my restrictions, and then you want to keep a copy on you in case somebody else in the company, depending on how big the company is, says, hey, I need you to come help us. We're gonna go lift this 300-pound item. You need to be able to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Pull out your work restrictions, and they'll say, okay, got it. And they'll move on. Or they'll send you home, but they'll do something, but you don't re-injure yourself. Got to look out for yourself on these. It's not always easy to do. My experience is people who are workers are doers, and they're going to try to do things, and it's not always good for them. And so this is the one time where you've got to be, unfortunately, for lack of a better term, a little more selfish, a little more concerned about your own well-being over the company. All right. Mistake number 4, giving inconsistent statements. If you tell somebody you hurt yourself one way and then you come back and 2 days later you say you hurt yourself another way, and your shoulder's hurting, now your neck's hurting, and now your lower back is hurting on the 3rd day, but it was only just your right arm on the 1st day. So you want to keep things as consistent as possible. You want to write it down. How did you hurt yourself? And then you want to use that statement every single time so that you're not changing how you got hurt and what body parts are hurt. Head to toe, everything that feels funny or different. If you don't do that and you have inconsistent statements, you are looking at it being denied by workers' compensation and fighting a very uphill battle that you may or may not be successful with. We've had some pretty ugly battles on stuff like that, and I can tell you it is very hard to be successful if there's no complaints on a body part that's injured several months down the road. So consider that. All right. Mistake number 5, not documenting everything. And that means mainly means keeping paperwork, keeping your work status, keeping your check stubs if you're getting check stubs, keeping your appointments, keeping details of your case. You should keep a folder with your own stuff for your case, and you can give copies of it to the employer, but don't give them the only one. At least keep a copy. You can give them the original, or you can keep the original, give them a copy, as long as it's legible. But what you want to do is you want to keep your own paperwork and document everything. We talked about giving notice. It is highly recommended that to give notice, you give them a letter that says, I was injured on the job and I need medical care. Now, does that mean that you have to write War and Peace? No, it's a very simple letter. We have an example letter we will be happy to share with you, no obligation, free, just so you have what you need. And then you need to make sure they receive it. If you hand deliver it, you need to write on the back of your copy who you delivered it to. If not, we always recommend that you fax it to them and get a fax confirmation sheet. And then you have proof in case they say, you know what, we don't recall you ever complaining about any injury. We're just going to have to send you home. Well, that piece of paper can be the difference between a workers' compensation claim and never getting the care you need, or finding yourself in litigation that takes years, which can be devastating to a family, especially if you're not physically able to work. So document everything, keep a folder. It's not too tough to do, so it's just highly recommended that you do that so that you're organized. If you have an attorney, you want to share that with them. If you don't, that's what you have to show what is important relating to your claim. You may want to get medical records, that kind of thing. These are things that attorneys normally do. All right, let's move on to number 6. Mistake number 6, missing important deadlines. Well, missing appointments, that would be an important deadline. If you have scheduled a hearing, and hopefully you've done that with an attorney, missing that hearing can be detrimental to your case. It can be devastating to your case. If you have a deposition and you miss that, they can charge you. They can say, look, you didn't tell us ahead of time. Now we've got cancellation fees we have to pay the other parties that need to be here, the court reporter, the videographer, if they're doing it via video or what have you. And so it's very important that you keep a strict calendar. You make your appointments, physical therapy and specialist appointments, clinic appointments, whatever appointments you've got. If you're at a hearing, if you got a hearing scheduled, you need to make that. Depositions, pretty straightforward, but you just want to make sure you don't miss any important deadlines. If the insurance company schedules you an independent medical evaluation, also known as a defense medical evaluation, then it's important that you show. They do have to give proper notice. If you have questions about what is proper notice, always reach out to a Georgia workers' compensation attorney. All right, let's move on to number 7. Number 7, trying to settle your workers' compensation claim without an attorney. Why is this detrimental? You may be undervaluing or you may be overvaluing your case. An attorney can tell you the range of value that your case is worth. And a lot of it depends on how much are you getting paid weekly, if you are getting paid weekly. In comp, what is your comp rate? What are your injuries? What are your future medical bills going to be like? Are you ordered to undergo surgery, or are you non-surgical? Do you have an permanent impairment? And if so, what is that impairment and how is that calculated? Well, all of those go into it. What does not go into it, unfortunately, is pain and suffering. So nobody who is receiving workers' compensation in Georgia receives any form of payment for pain and suffering as far as work injuries are concerned. So a lot of times we have people who are clients who want a value that is actually higher than can be calculated, in the sense that it's just out of the realm of reality. And we talk to them and we say, look, that we'll never get there on a worst case scenario, because settlement is completely optional. Both parties have to want and agree to settle. Well, the insurance company, if you're pie in the sky, it's super high with your number, and it's not something that's even realistic, the insurance company will just say, hey, that's good, no thanks. We'll just keep paying you if they're paying you checks, because they've done the math. They know to the penny at what point they will settle the case for, and if you don't accept that, they'll pay you out, hoping that something happens to you. You get into another accident, it aggravates the injury, not at work, somewhere else, car wreck, anything like that, somebody jumps you, something like that. They're not going to do that, but they are going to realize that life has a way of doing things like that to people. And if that's the case, that will get them off the hook and they won't have to pay you anything. So it's important that you speak with a Georgia workers' compensation attorney if you're going into a settlement, so you have a good idea and a good range of value as to where your case might resolve if that's what you're trying to do. All right, let's go to mistake number 8. Mistake number 8, posting on social media websites. If you have a serious back injury and you come to the deposition and you're using a cane or you're using a walker and you say, hey, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I'm just basically trapped at my house. And so unfortunately, that's just the way it is with my back injury. And then you're posting on social media that you're at a wedding, you're at a birthday, and you're on top of a table dancing with no cane or anything like that. Those things will absolutely destroy your workers' compensation claim for obvious reasons. And so it's important that, and it's just really best said, that you don't post anything about what you're doing, what you're thinking, anything. They are watching. Just keep that in mind. They are watching. So don't post anything on social media. If you have posted something on social media, you don't want to delete it. That's destruction of evidence. That can get you into trouble as well. Just don't start. All right, number 9, returning to work too soon. We have a lot of cases where someone has been taken out of work, they're paid weekly checks, and all of a sudden the employer calls them or the adjuster calls them and says, great news, we have work for you, so come on back to work. Let's get you back in there. We know that you really want to get back to normal, blah, blah, blah. That could be a fatal mistake to your claim. So if you're in a situation like that, you want to reach out to a Georgia workers' compensation attorney immediately. It's a very, very critical part of your claim. And if you return back to work, they could get the checks cut off, and getting those checks cut back on could be very difficult to do. The fact of the matter is there are requirements that employer and that insurance company follow to get you back to work properly. So what we're telling you is nothing more than they need to follow the law. They're going to make sure you do. You need to make sure they do. How do you do that? Contact a Georgia workers' compensation attorney, talk to them about your situation, and see if you can get that squared away before you return back to work. Once you return back to work, it could be too late. So it's important that you do that immediately. All right. Last but not least, mistake number 10, not seeking help or answers from a Georgia workers' compensation attorney. So what do we mean by this? If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, contact a Georgia workers' compensation attorney. Ask for a free consultation. We offer what we call free strategy sessions. So what is that? Well, that's where we ask you a few questions, find out kind of where you are in your claim, get an understanding, make sure we're on the same page, and then say, okay, here's what we think would be in your best interest, and here's what you need to look out for, and here's what to expect moving forward. We hope that information's been helpful. We hope that you don't fall for any of these mistakes. And if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. We talk to a lot of people, and we're happy to talk to you and see if we can get you on course so that the insurance company doesn't take advantage of you on your work injury. All right, stay safe. Thank you.
If you or a loved one has been injured on the job and have questions about what is going on with your claim, feel free to give us a call or reach out. We'll be happy to answer any question we can to help you move along with the claim. Thank you.